Okay, folks, the meeting has begun.
We got to be in order. She's first. I'm first. So over here.
So Agnes made those beautiful bird houses to commemorate her son. Yeah. So I'm just live, everybody. Here we are at the Redlands Tea Party Patriots. And there's Carolyn. Yay! And there's Agnes right there. Beautiful flag. She's an angel mom. Her son, Ronald, was killed by an illegal alien in 2002. Terrible. And there's Greg, who the president of the Tea Party Patriots is right over there. He's in the black shirt. Sorry if the light's hard to see things. Been here for like half an hour. Thank you. Loved it. Yeah, was it hit the spot? I've been here for half an hour. There's no waitress, nothing.
I know. They're really good. That's why I ordered when I did immediately.
Okay, I guess I'll starve. That's too bad. Look at all these people. This is great. This is a full house, folks.
Are they working now in the back? And here in the back. Wave to us if you can hear in the back. Thank you.
It's too bad. I had to get my order out of the bathroom.
Excuse me.
Yay, hey Agnes. Lots of wonderful American flags. Musical instruments all over. We are at the Mills Creek Company, right? Mills Creek Company here in Mentone, California. So we're waiting for the speakers to arrive and everything. It's going to be great.
Rob,
All right. So Mike, what's this sign for?
this is for Daryl Issa
And why do people need to call him?
because he doesn't have a picture of Donald Trump on any of his offices.
Wow.
I called him, I said, I want pictures on there.
Yes. Go South Bay.
I want pictures on his walls. He goes, well, we're going to get a picture of him. I go, I want an official White House portrait hanging on your wall.
Unbelievable. And there are federal buildings that still do not have Donald Trump's picture either. You know, U.S. attorneys' offices don't have them.
It should not be tolerated.
Yeah, he's the president. Get over it, folks. The deep state's in deep revolt. They're doing a good job. They're just setting up the signs. They're setting up the sound.
She's talking and everybody else is talking.
You know, that's not a good sign.
Somebody has to shush everybody up. There's too much talking.
We all shush at the same time. There you go. Where's Beach?
Parole, parole. Pronouns. Yeah. So Daryl Issa is trying to play him.
The back speaker.
Okay, there's Greg. So there's Greg Britton.
We're going to get the show on the road. I'm going to turn this one up a little bit more, and then we'll do as best we can. If you really can't hear, then I'll try turning it up some more. I'll try turning the front one up some more, so let me know.
So how's the city council at Huntington Park? Pretty frazzled?
Oh yeah, we absolutely burned them with the DACA repeal and Sheriff Joe's pardon. Yeah, that was really good. Oh, here we go. This is the
United States was founded by immigration. People with good careers, with good jobs, educated, that came to this country.
This is Agnes's video.
My name is Agnes Ebony. I was born in Budapest, Hungary. I was 2 years old when my parents left as refugees. We crossed into Yugoslavia. We were in a refugee camp for about 9 months because my mother refused to stay in Yugoslavia. They refused to allow us to go to the American embassy, to come to the United States. So we had the choice of Austria, South Africa, or Brazil. We lived in Brazil for 13 years, applied 3 times to immigrate to the United States.
Sorry.
The 3rd time we were successful. My mother never gave up. We immigrated in November of 1970 legally. Most American people want to have security. My son Ronald went to Omani to drop off some food for his children. He had 2 boys, Matthew and Marcel. Ronald was talking on the driveway, his friend Robert, when Ronald noticed somebody coming behind Robert and turned halfway and said instant the guy fired. My son got shot in the arm. The bullet traveled across his chest. He ran up the next driveway and banged on the door and collapsed.
Oh my God. This illegal alien will be released in 2020.
I was camping with my 2 daughters with Girl Scouts at Lake Paris. I just began to doze off, and about 12:30, the park ranger came shining a bright light into our tent, yelling out my name that I had an emergency. I called home, and my husband said that the detective in Omani said that Ronald had been shot in the shoulder. He's expected to survive. He's in surgery. And that wasn't the case. Drove home. My husband met me halfway in the hallway, gave me a hug, and he said, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "No." I said, "That's okay. I just went to the hospital to be with Ronald when he wake up." And I tried to walk away, and he held me back, and he says, "You don't understand. Ronald didn't make it. My son was murdered." Our country has been lax in enforcing immigration laws. They let thousands of people down because of open borders. People that have lost loved ones, that their lives changed forever, fighting for attention to this issue, for people like me, for people like you, for everybody. I wasn't exempt. I thought crime would never hit me. But it could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast.
Thank you very much, Agnes, for sharing your story tonight. And with that, we'll have our invocation and flag salute. Jerry Castillo and Loretta Sanchez. You'll come forward. Jerry will give the invocation for us.
Hello, everybody. If you want to stand for the pledge after prayer. Let's bow our hearts as we ask help and thanks to the Lord. Father in heaven, we thank you for this time together. Thank you for all the blessings you've given us, your son Jesus. Thank you for raising up Trump, Lord, at this time, that we need a true leader with backbone. Help us, Lord. We ask your blessing on everybody in the Tea Party, the meetings, the rallies. Keep the evil away. Give us creativity, how to talk to the people the way you'd have us talk to them with Scripture so you can use that in their hearts. Lord, all the congressmen, the mayors that are being silly and going against helping our country, we ask that you speak to them, that they would turn to you in repentance. Father, we ask your blessing on our families, that you'd keep our hearts soft, but we keep that boldness, that hunger to please you and do the right thing. So we look to you, Father. We thank you again. And we look to you for wisdom, for guidance, for direction. Keep us healthy. And we want to be doers, Lord. So we look to you for strength and everything. And we say thank you, Father. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
And let's remain standing And Loretta will lead us in the pledge.
And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wonderful.
And please be seated. It's just nice to see everyone again. And I know there are some new faces tonight, so can I just ask you to raise your hand if you're here for the first time?
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. We're so glad to have you. I know that there are some special people in the audience, and some you will hear from a little bit later, but I do want Stacy Barth to stand. Stacy is running for governor. And we'll speak a little bit about her a little bit later in the program. Aha, we always have a special welcome for our veterans. Just please show of hands for all the veterans here tonight.
Thank you for your service. All right.
Thank you all for serving our country and protecting our freedoms. Tea Party, what does it mean? Well, what do you think it means? I think we each have our own ideas, but we protect our freedom to make our own decisions and the choices that are right for us and our families. We believe in limited government, and we want to be in charge of our lives rather than letting the government be in charge. And we believe the government exists to serve us. And many times we believe that they think it's the other way around. We're here to change that. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what's on the program for tonight. Our speakers are here and they're ready to go. And first of all, we're going to be hearing from Joel Pollak. We're very glad that he was able to make it tonight. Breitbart News, my favorite place to find out what's going on. And Joel was kind enough to come tonight and give us the scoop on what is really happening, what is the real story.
And we thank Lee Koo and Jeff Schwick, who made the connection for us so you have Joel here.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
Jeff, stand up so everybody knows who you are.
He's from Oceanside and he helps with Roger Ogden's efforts with Patriot
Now,
Fire.
also tonight we are going to have Malcolm McGough, who is from Australia. And I've already heard him, and he's a delightful person. And he'll be talking tonight about what he has been doing in the last couple of years here in California to help with the Trump campaign. And now he's taken on election integrity. And you all know we need to be taking care of the fraud in our elections. And guess who's back? Where's John? John Barry, where are you? John's been serving for the last couple months, doing his duty, and now he's back with us. And we're hearing from him tonight. Okay, just 2 or 3 announcements very quickly. You already have seen the beautiful birdhouses, and some of you have already purchased some raffle tickets. We're going to be giving away 2 of these tonight. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, the ladies here in the front will help with that. The tickets are just $5 each or 3 for $10. When you see these, you're going to want one. I do already. So we'll keep working on that, and let's move on. I'd like to give Lee Koo an opportunity to come up and announce the event coming up on Saturday. First Lee. This is on your calendars that are on your tables, so I hope you'll be sure to take one, and Lee will tell you a little bit more about it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. This Saturday, we will be having a ceremony to memorialize the victims of 9/11. It's going to be in Upland, downtown, outside their city hall. The address, I have the flyer here, and I think I passed one out to everybody. If you didn't get one, please see me. Please come by if you can. It's from 10 to 11, and that's about it. Thank you.
I'll be there.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to it. So here's my favorite thing. Emergency preparedness. If you're not prepared yet, shame on you, because we can expect trouble ahead. So I just want to tell you about an opportunity to learn more about how to be prepared. We meet on the third Wednesday at Bob's Big Boy in Calamasa. Our next meeting is September 20. This meeting is free, and I'd like to invite you to come. There are flyers on your table. And I'm very proud to be able to tell you that we're going to have a guest speaker this time, and it's Greg Britton.
Yeah, numbers 1 through 9 on the list of speakers couldn't make it that night.
So you can refer to the flyer that's on
We
your
are in
tables.
Mentone,
And as
California.
you know, he does his homework.
This is the
He knows
Redlands
what's
Tea Party
happening.
Patriots
So we're
meeting.
going to address the issues of the
And there's
protesters,
Joel Pollak. He is the editor-in-chief,
neo-Nazis,
senior
the
editor-in-chief
ground
for
sheriffs. Who are these
Breitbart
people, and
News.
what are they trying to do to us? What's happened to faith, family, and freedom? And what can we do about it? So these are the issues that we're going to be discussing at this meeting. I hope you will join us. We meet at 6:30 at Bob's Big Boy. So if any questions, see me after. We hold a rally here in Redlands
Okay.
once a month.
Yeah.
Our next rally is September 3rd. We have lots of pictures. I don't know that we have time to show them right now, but you know who that guy is? The big tall
Joseph
one
Turner's
over
not
there
here
by the
today.
bar. Wave to everybody. We had so much fun at our last rally, didn't we? So we just want to tell you that it's coming up again next month. We're having it 1 week later than usual, but this also is on your calendar. So mark it down. Some of you have already seen the shirts on the table. I'll just remind you that we have 2 nice shirts. Either one, the price is $20, and we have pretty good sizes left. Show the picture of the other one.
There you go.
Okay, and lastly, my last thing to say is that we always appreciate your help, and if the ladies, tonight, I think I saw her running around here, if you could send the little teapots around and whatever you feel like you'd like to give, that helps us keep our programs going. With that, I think I'm ready to turn it over to Greg.
Yep.
This really all started with Andrew Breitbart. and he passed away in 2012. He got started way 10 years before that, and he approached a friend of his, Larry Solov, and said, let's change the world.
Yeah.
My first encounter with Andrew Breitbart was when he came to the University of Redlands in September of 2015. And, he was kind of this rabble-rouser, conservative guy, entertaining, took no guff from anybody. Okay, that was good, but I didn't yet fully appreciate what he was doing. This poster here, he signed that at the time, and it was given to the Redlands Tea Party Patriots. We auctioned it. And I am embarrassed to say how much I ended up paying for this autographed poster, but it is for sale. So, if anyone's interested. Andrew said that we are in a long war for the soul of America. And he talked about activism. Walk towards the fire. Don't worry about what they call you. All of those things are said because they want to stop you in your tracks. But if you keep going, you're sending a message to people who are rooting for you, who are agreeing with you, that they can do it too. And the left and the liberals are still using that tactic. Used to just call us all racist, now we're racist, fascist, Nazis, whatever. After Andrew passed, Steve Bannon took over Breitbart News, and he built it into an organization with 2 billion page views in 2016. It's the 29th most popular website in the country. It's the 13th most popular Facebook page in the entire world.
Wow.
It has 10 times the reader engagement rate that any other mainstream media has, and all the comments they have on their pages. There are bureaus in London, Paris, Texas, California, and in the enemy capital city of Washington, D.C. They're on Sirius Patriot Radio, channel 125, and I hear that there's going to be some big things coming next, and maybe Joel will be able to give us a hint on what's coming next. Now, the New York Times, of all, I really quote the New York Times, said that in the short annals of journalism, there is no precursor to Breitbart. The way the site appeared to materialize overnight and from the outermost periphery of media dominate the political conversation in the pivotal election. There's some unique things, and perhaps Joel will tell us how Breitbart was able to do that. As Trump took office, Steve gave an interview. If you think they're going to give you back your country without a fight, you are sadly mistaken. We can sure see that. Every day is going to be a fight. Well, he recently left the administration and went back, and he says that the presidency that we fought for and won is over. Now, there'll be some good things that will come out of President Trump, but that presidency, that disruptive presidency, is over. But in perhaps a warning to everyone else, he says, now I'm free. I have got my hands back on my weapons. So look out. So, Joel Pollak spoke at the Unite IE conference, and was one of the great speakers there. He is co-author of a book, How Trump Won. You can read, he's a senior editor at Breitbart News, and you can read him there. He has a Twitter feed at Joel Pollak. When the day that Steve left the administration, he put out a tweet that said #war. And that was one of Andrew's favorite hashtags. We'll talk about that. When we had him on the radio show a couple weeks back, he said, what was different about Breitbart? We fight.
Yeah.
Joel's also he started life in South Africa, immigrated legally to America, started on the left, and then saw the light and came over and joined the right. His one, I do need to mention it, he did make an attempt at elected politics. And he took on an incumbent Democrat, which of course it would be hard to do in a Democrat district, but he narrowly lost that election to the Democratic incumbent by 66 to 31%. So I'm sure next time he'll be able to carry that. And then you've heard enough from me. So with that, let's turn it over to Joel Pollak, and just thank you so much for coming to speak to us.
Wow, what an introduction. That was fantastic and quite moving to see the pictures of Andrew. And I have to say also that the beginning of this meeting was incredibly moving. That film we saw about the angel mom resonated with me because, as Greg told you, my family's also a legal immigrant family, and my wife is a legal immigrant, and I have to apologize to you for not speaking here last month. The reason I didn't speak was my wife was suddenly called to do extra duty. You see, she's in the Navy Reserve, and she's an immigrant who volunteered to join our country's military, and she fixes helicopters down in Coronado. So I had the kids on my own and couldn't figure out how to work that out, so I had to cancel at the last minute, but she's back home with the kids tonight, having flown around Coronado in those, I think they're AC-60s with the HSC-3, the Merlins they call them. They're the search and rescue team of the Navy, and I'm very proud of her. Legal immigrant, very proud American, and it just means so much when I see stories like that. My parents did not live in an oppressive country like Hungary, at least not to them. It was an oppressive country to other people, but my family came from South Africa. The reason my parents came here was they did not want to participate anymore in a country where illegality had become the law. I grew up with that phrase. My father said, you cannot live in a system where illegality becomes the law. And when people talk about DACA and why we should legalize all the illegal people because it's easier, to me, that goes against why my parents came here, why they brought me here as a baby. Exactly. They could have lived a comfortable life there. They weren't running away necessarily from any kind of persecution. But they chose to live in a place where the rule of law prevailed. That was really important to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, just terrifically moving. Even the Pledge of Allegiance, I found myself choking up a bit because yesterday I took my daughter to kindergarten and she said the Pledge of Allegiance for the first time. So there you go.
Wonderful.
Anyway, so I've got a book out, which is one of the reasons I'm here, How Trump Won, and I'll talk a bit about that. I hope you can all get one. I'm selling them at a discounted price of $15 with an autograph. But I also want to talk about what's really exciting to us, and that's what's in the news right now. And, you know, I just want to say I think we're living in an extraordinary time. I think no matter what else you hear from the TV pundits and cable news and talk radio, it's important to remember we are living in an extraordinary time. There has not been a presidency like this for more than 150 years, maybe longer. In fact, I was in the room when Donald Trump won. I was at the election night party, and the journalists were flipping out. Just completely crazy. And it's a really funny story that I tell in the book. In fact, there were a lot of nervous Breitbart people there. I went up to Matt Boyle, our political editor. I said, how's he doing? It was about 7:30 in the evening. It felt like a funeral, right? Because Frank Luntz had just gone on Twitter. He had seen all the exit polls, and he said, Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. So it wasn't looking good. I said to Matt, well, how's it looking? And he gave me this cold stare, and he said, Trump's going to lose. And I said to Raheem Kassam, our London editor, well, what do you think? Because he's a veteran of these political fights, and he points to the TV screen, and Rudy Giuliani's on the screen. He says, if they're wheeling out Giuliani this early, he's losing. So it didn't look good. And then I said, well, what's that map of the panhandle of Florida? Are they still voting over there? He said, yeah, they're in their other time zone. I said, are you kidding me? They're calling Florida, or they're about to call Florida for Hillary Clinton, and they haven't counted the panhandle? I was just down there. I was a reporter on the campaign trail for the last part of the campaign with Donald Trump. I was down there. That is deep, deep red country. It's practically Alabama. That's how deep red that part of Florida is. I went up to a woman at that rally in Pensacola, Florida, and I asked her the same question I ask everybody when I go to these rallies. Why are you here? Why do you like Donald Trump? And I said to this woman, you know, why are you supporting Donald Trump? And she looked at me cradling a baby in her arms, and she kind of waited a second or two, and she said, because I'm not an idiot. So I knew that she hadn't voted yet, right? If they hadn't counted her vote, Florida could go the other way. And lo and behold, the hour passed and Florida flipped. And suddenly Matt Boyle, who told me an hour before that Trump was going to lose, said, he's going to win, he's going to win. So,
Yeah.
but then Giuliani came down the stairs and he said to the reporters, nothing like this has happened since 1828. And they had no idea what he was talking about. But he was talking about Andrew Jackson. That's what he was talking about. Until then, the presidency of the United States had been held by the elites that had run the country since independence. The northeastern elites and the southern plantation elites. And along comes Andrew Jackson, the Westerner. Military man, frontiersman. And he runs, and the elites cannot stand it. They just are beside themselves, and they don't like him even after he's won. They can't stand the people he brought to the White House. They get their footprints on the furniture. They have rude habits. Sound familiar a little bit? We've been in this movie before, and he had a profound impact on American history, and we're seeing that every day. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what my column is about tomorrow. My column, I have a Friday column called Blue State Blues, and my column tomorrow is called The Week That Donald Trump Restored the Republic. That's this week. That's this week. Why did Donald Trump, and how did Donald Trump restore the Republic this week? He did two things. First of all, he rescinded DACA. Now,
Yes. Yeah.
I know from a conservative point of view, it's a debate that's only halfway over, right? Because he sent it to Congress. He said, you have 6 months to fix this, and we don't know what that fix is going to look like yet. So you might say, from a conservative perspective, well, this could be a bad thing if they give us amnesty or whatever. But for me, as a constitutional Tea Party conservative, we're halfway there because he restored the idea of the separation of powers that Barack Obama systematically destroyed for 8 years. And all of a sudden, all these Democrat pundits are on TV admitting, well, the way it happened wasn't right. You didn't hear that from them for 8 years or whatever it was. They didn't say it until Trump pointed it out, and now they have to admit it. Yes, Dianne Feinstein, our own senator, says, it's true, DACA is on shaky ground.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Where
Why
were you
didn't
for the
say
past?
anything when he did it? Well, Donald Trump restored that part of our Constitution. And the other thing he did,
Okay.
and this is very controversial, I don't know how you feel about it in this room, probably will have some split opinions about it, but he sat down with all the leaders of Congress. He sat down with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell on one side, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on the other.
Crying Chuck.
And they said, what are we going to do about this debt ceiling? And the Republicans wanted, I think, an extension of 18 months, and Schumer said, we want 3 months. And Trump said, okay, we'll go with 3 months. And, you know, people can't understand it. He agreed with the Democrats, and McConnell and Ryan were beside themselves. What does this mean? He went right around us and dealt with the Democrats. And, although I don't like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, and I don't trust them either, nor should you.
We're at the
I think
Redlands
it's a
Tea
great
Party,
thing
folks.
because it sends
And
a
this
message
is Joel Pollak.
to McConnell and Ryan. You get your act together, and you get that caucus united. And look, it's a cheap way to do it, right? Because the way that Ryan and McConnell had run this thing, they were going to cave in the end anyway. So Trump just fast-forwarded 2 weeks and said, look, this is cheap for me to, it's hurricane funding, okay? People want this, fine. The Republican caucus has got to know that if people like John McCain come along and decide they're going to be cute and stop the repeal of Obamacare or stop the passage of tax reform because they have a personal fight with the president or whatever it is, it's over. Trump has alternatives. He's got Jeff Flake as an alternative. Sorry, not Jeff Flake. His opponents. He's got Kelly Ward. That's right.
Yes. Roy Moore.
But exactly, not Jeff Flake. What a last name that is. Anyway, Trump is telling Republican leaders, if you won't unify your caucus, I will. I will unify them by showing them there is no alternative but what I want to do. And I was elected on this agenda. On Sunday, my boss, Steve Bannon, who's thankfully back with Breitbart, we're very glad. You should tune in. If you're not listening to me on Breitbart News Radio on Sirius XM 125 on the 4 p.m. But also, actually no, we're in the Pacific time zone, so you can listen to and then to CBS, 7 p.m., Steve Bannon on 60 Minutes. And one of the things he's going to say on 60 Minutes, I know because I've seen the clip, is the Republican establishment has been fighting against the election of 2016 for the last 8 months.
Enough.
They do not like it, and they think they can make it go away.
Not going to happen.
You know, Greg mentioned that I told them on the radio what makes Breitbart different is that we fight. We fight.
Amen.
I have to thank you, and it's so incredibly gratifying to drive for 2.5 hours from West LA to come here and see this amazing turnout. And I have to thank you for fighting. Because although, you might say, well, California, you know, our electoral votes don't matter.
It's not the attitude to
You
have.
matter. Everything you do matter. The angel moms from California matter.
Yes!
The volunteers from California matter. And you know what? As Andrew Breitbart would have said, the citizen journalism you do, when you go to the rallies, you have rallies on September 30th, or whenever you're having the Trump rallies, and you get into arguments with protesters, and you videotape them doing what they do, the Antifa people and the Occupy people or whoever, that becomes national news. That's content we use. The citizen journalism you do here matters. You're in the belly of the beast. You're in the deepest blue of deep states, and you are exposing for the rest of the country. Do you know why the debate changed on Antifa? Do you know why it changed? Because a guy named Joey Gibson allowed himself to get beaten up in Berkeley. And he showed the country that they were the aggressors, that the left-wing Antifa protesters were the violent ones, not the people on the other side. So everything you do matters. And that's what Breitbart as a website
People are
believes.
pointing out what happened to me as
We
well.
fight every single day. You know, there were days a year ago, things didn't look so good for Donald Trump. And I'm openly Trump supporting, even though I've also got a journalistic job to do. You know, I've got to edit, I've got to write the news, and I have to be accurate. They know I'm not objective because I take a side, but I have to be accurate. But you know, there were days where you're discouraged. You wake up, you look at the news, the polls are terrible. You know, NBC found an old tape from Access Hollywood of Donald Trump, whatever the story is. And whenever I got down, I would say to myself, find the news. Just find the news, find the news, find the news. There's got to be a way to put one foot in front of the other. Just keep going. What you do at Breitbart every day is you fight. And what you do in the Tea Party every day is you fight. We don't fight because we're necessarily at war. We don't dislike our fellow citizens. We want to persuade our fellow citizens. You mentioned, it was mentioned earlier, a bit of my sordid past on the left. I actually had an occasion to read some of my college or immediate post-college writing. I'm 40 years old now, but back in my early 20s, I was very much on the left. And in fact, I barely participated in the college Democrats because they were too centrist for me. And I was very much on the left. And it took 10 years, but after a lot of political experiences I had and a lot of community service experiences I had, where I went out into communities and saw the policies I believed in being enacted and saw that they were having the opposite effect of the one that was advertised, and the wheels started to turn. And it's because I was a true believer that I changed my mind. A lot of my friends from college who are still on the left didn't really take those left-wing ideas so seriously. It's kind of a posture. They may live like wealthy people who want to pay lower taxes, but they vote like liberals because it makes them feel better. I really believed, and I took a scientific approach to it. I believed what they were doing would work, and when I saw it didn't, I went back to the original idea and had to rethink it.
Yeah.
And I went back at my 10th college reunion, and I saw a lot of the kids, now adults, who were Republicans in college, and I remembered every argument I had with them. I remembered every single one at college. And I thought that I had won those arguments, but they stuck in my brain for years and years, and I thought, and I thought, and I rethought. And I said to my friends at this reunion, you know, I've been thinking about what you said to me for 10 years, and you are right. And they just laughed because they could barely remember. But the point is, when you're engaging your fellow citizens, they may disagree with you today, but if you put things in a way that leaves the right impression, you can convince them tomorrow as they go forward. And if you can disagree respectfully, forcefully, but respectfully, you can win, you can change minds, you can change the world. That's what we do at Breitbart. Now, let me just get into the book a little bit, How Trump Won. It's important to remember how he won because he has to fight every day, and it's important to remind Republicans because they still don't know how to win. But There's basically three big reasons I go into in the book. And I co-wrote the book with Larry Schweikart. I don't know if you know Larry. He wrote The Patriots' History to the United States. He's a retired historian. He wrote that book, Patriots' History, in answer to Howard Zinn's People's History, which is kind of a left-wing revisionist version of history.
Very destructive.
Yeah, all slavery, discrimination, colonialism, we're awful people. So Larry wrote the counter to that, which is a totally accurate and positive take on American history. And I partnered with him in writing his book. And basically three themes, how Trump won. Number one, Trump talked about issues nobody was talking about. Republicans weren't talking about them, and Democrats were generally not talking about them. Now, I want to tell you a story that involves the angel moms, and I'm so glad some of them are here because they're so integral to this story of how Trump won.
Yes.
Trump declared his candidacy, came down the escalator on June 16, 2015. And for 3 or 4 weeks after that, he was at the bottom of the polls. Hard to remember that, right? But if you look at Real Clear Politics at that time, I don't know how many of you go onto that website, they have pretty good polling data. He was bumping along the bottom. You know, he was behind Mike Huckabee, Rand Paul, I think, was neck and neck with him. He was down there, he wasn't really going anywhere. And then he had a meeting with this group called the Remembrance Project. It was on July 10th, 2015. The Remembrance Project are families who have lost loved ones to crimes by illegal aliens.
The California director.
And why did he meet this? I mean, this tells you how everything's connected. Why did he meet this group? Because 10 days before that, a young woman named Kate Steinle was killed, was murdered by an illegal alien who'd been deported 7 times. And he picked up a gun and shot her on a pier in San Francisco for no reason. And we at Breitbart covered that story, and we made that front page news at Breitbart, and we forced the media to cover it.
Thank you.
And Michelle Moons, who's a California-based reporter, she's now in D.C. You might see her at the White House briefing every once in a while. She's a blonde woman, usually stands on the side. She had gone, you know her, right? She had gone to the immigration protests for a year, 2 years. She covered that story. She elevated that story to national news. Well, who saw that? Donald Trump saw that. And so Donald Trump sought out the families of the Remembrance Project. And there's a famous photograph of him meeting the families, standing there with his arms folded in front of him, looking very concerned. I remember the name of the photographer. It wasn't a Breitbart photographer. It was an Associated Press photographer. That picture went around the world. And within 9 days, Donald Trump had gone from number 6 in the polls at about 6.5%, straight to number 1, and he never looked back. And it's because Trump was talking about illegal immigration and nobody else was. Now, why did that resonate? Well, not everybody, thank goodness, not everybody knows someone who's lost someone to an illegal alien, but everybody in America knows some way in which the government has let them down. Where the government promised to do something, promised to protect them and let them down. Whether it was terrorism, you know, we kept being told this wasn't terrorism, it was gun violence, or whatever workplace violence, whatever they called it. Whether it was Obamacare, they were promised insurance, they didn't get it, or it was too expensive. Everybody felt the government had promised all this stuff and they had let them down. And so that resonated, because a lot of Americans felt victimized by their government. Trade was another issue. Now, I happen to have pretty libertarian views on trade, but look at who Trump was talking to. And look what happened in a place like Michigan, for example. Bernie Sanders went to Michigan and had similar positions to Trump on some of the trade issues, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Bernie Sanders stole Michigan from under Hillary Clinton's nose in the primary. She was up 20% in the polls the day before they went to vote, and he won. How did that happen? Trade. Yeah. The voters who showed up were angry about trade and they didn't trust her on trade. Those same voters, what do you think they did in November?
Voted for Trump.
Voted for Hillary Clinton?
No.
Well, Michigan went to Trump. That tells you some of those Bernie Sanders voters went over to Trump because of trade.
Yep.
And he was talking about the issues that the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment in Washington decided were already settled, done deal. You know, if you read the Republican autopsy, they called it, after 2012. Oh, we lost in 2012. What should we do to win in 2016? I know, let's pass amnesty. That was page 1 or 2 of the report.
Yep.
It was just they kind of slipped it in there. no debate, nothing. It was just assumed that they had to do this. And Trump said, no, this is something we got to debate. So that's reason number one that he won. The other two reasons. Reason number two, Twitter. Okay. How many of you would like Trump to stop tweeting?
No.
Exactly. Now, maybe edit a little bit, but Trump used Twitter and other means to go right over the heads of the mainstream media. He said to them, I'm not going to go through you as a filter, I'm going to talk directly to the people. And he did that also at his rallies. You know, if you went to a Trump rally, how many of you went to Trump rallies? You know, right, first of all, what was something you noticed about Trump rallies? What did he do that was different from other politicians? Anything?
He allowed individuals to stand up and speak to the crowd too.
Okay, so he got individuals to stand up and take the microphone from him. That's something nobody did.
Like Agnes.
A couple other things he did. He showed up on time. Yeah. Okay, I know that sounds kind of strange. Why is that a factor? Well, let me tell you. When I ran for Congress, as you heard about my narrow loss earlier, I was told by campaign consultants, here's what you do. You need to create a sense of mystique about the candidate so people will donate money to spend time with you and think that you're greater than you actually are. So what you need to do is you need to start late. Even if you're there on time, sit in the back room and wait 20 minutes. That way the audience anticipates you and you can show up and you can impress them. And then don't speak for very long. Speak 15 minutes at most and then leave. Trump did exactly the opposite. He showed up on time and he spoke for an hour. Now, if you're standing in that audience and you've driven, 200 miles to be there or whatever, that makes you feel important. Here's a guy who's a billionaire celebrity, could be doing anything else, and he's giving his time to you, and he's telling you by starting on time that your time is worth something to him. And when I would have asked people in the audience, once I asked these two young girls in Detroit why they were at this rally. Again, same question, why are you here? And they said to me, because he loves us.
Yes.
And I said, how do you know he loves you? And they said, because he doesn't have to do this. And by showing up on time and spending quality time with the audience, he sent everybody there the message that he cared about them. And that's how people really felt and still feel. The third reason he won, and you all know this, and we've alluded to it earlier, he just worked harder than Hillary Clinton and everybody else. I was on the campaign press plane, okay? I was with all these reporters who hated Donald Trump, and they were convinced he was going to lose, and man, it was fun on election night to see their faces. But, they would all tell you privately they would much rather have covered Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton, simply because she was so boring. She was really, really boring. She would do one event a day, maybe, and it would be a set piece with the bleachers in the right position and the audience strategically placed behind her to get the right sort of diversity tableau or whatever it was. It was also stage managed, and Trump was doing 5 events a day, 7 different states, it was a carnival. It was so much fun. It was crazy. There'd be fights at the edge of the crowd. The police would have to carry people away. There'd be these crazy characters showing up. It was unbelievable. It was fun. Even they had fun despite themselves. It was a great time. But it was because he was working hard. That's why it was fun for them. He was not resting. He exhausted these young reporters, some of whom were a third of his age. Okay? So those are the 3 basic reasons. But if you go into the book, there's so many other interesting things. One of the interesting things Larry points out, now Larry called the election in August 2015. That's 15 months before anybody voted. He said Trump's going to win. Why is Trump going to win? Because he was looking at voter registration data. All of these Democrats in northeastern Ohio and places like that were switching their registrations to Republican, hundreds of thousands. And you know what? They're still doing it. Larry Schweikart will tell you today that if the election were held today, never mind the polls, the approval numbers, or whatever, Trump would win again by a bigger margin.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the reason is simple. It's just plain old school politics. He is delivering for the people who elected him.
Hello.
The voters in the Rust Belt states that were the hardest hit by Obama's climate change policy, that gave the most... by the way, Trump did best in the counties that had the highest percentage of military casualties. Think about that.
Yeah.
Okay? They trust him as commander-in-chief. They do not trust the Democrats who won't name the enemy. And Trump is building his support there, not diminishing it, not losing it. So that's the story of what's continued to happen. Now, I know we have limited time, and I know there's so many other things. We've got another great speaker from the Election Integrity Project, which I think will be fascinating. By the way, I spent a lot of time in South Africa. I grew up in Chicago, went to college here, and then I went back there. I worked there for several years. They have photo ID in South Africa, okay? This poor African country has photo ID, okay? So don't tell me, you know, we can't do it here. But it's really interesting. Let's talk about Breitbart for a second and Steve Bannon. So Steve's a big reason that Trump won. I think that Steve brought discipline to the Trump campaign just like he brings discipline to Breitbart. He's got a lot of drive. He's got a lot of leadership. He's a tough son of a you-know-what to work for, but that's how the best always are. I know the veterans in the room have worked for a few. and those are the best leaders sometimes. They're not always personable in the trenches. They'll be the nicest, biggest teddy bears, you know, when you're home or you're at the bar sharing a beer or whatever. Steve doesn't drink, by the way. But they're tough. You need to be tough. You need to be tough to fight in this business because you don't get points for artistic impression. You don't get points for miscongeniality. You get points by winning, by taking scalps, by counting votes. And that's how we win. And Steve's back at Breitbart. As he said, he's got his hands back on his weapons now. And we are going to go places. I don't know if you've noticed there's a bit of a gap in conservative media lately, just a bit. So many of the networks, so many of the other publications decided that it would be better to trash Donald Trump for whatever reason they had, whether it was they had their own candidates they liked better, or because they decided that somehow they didn't like his ideas, or whatever it was. Different reasons for different people, who knows. There were a lot of candidates I could have voted for, by the way. Trump wasn't my only choice. He wasn't even my first choice. I know certainly in the Inland Empire, if you look at the polls, Ted Cruz had a lot of support. Ted Cruz, constitutional conservative, lots of other good candidates. But you know, at Breitbart, we didn't rule any of them out. Well, Jeb Bush, we kind of ruled him out.
Oh yeah.
But and John Kasich, although he was always entertaining. But
Rainbow fashion.
by the way, Arnold Schwarzenegger endorsed John Kasich. Didn't that swing a few votes? You know, I love this. You know, Kasich's fun. Can we just spend a minute on John Kasich? You know, Donald Trump should thank John Kasich in a way, because if you look at how the primary shook out, what was the big problem for Donald Trump's opponents in the primary? Right? Donald Trump for a while never got above 40% in the primary. So theoretically, 60% of Republicans at one point wanted somebody else. The problem was that Marco Rubio had some of them, Ted Cruz had some of them, and John Kasich had this thin little sliver of them. And because Kasich wouldn't drop out and endorse one or the other of Rubio and Cruz, Donald Trump just kept winning. So in a funny kind of way, he helped Donald Trump win, but obviously without intending to. But look, Breitbart, I'll announce here something that not yet public, so you're the first to hear it. But we will be starting, in addition to our morning news show, which is very early in California, 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. Excuse me, it's 6 to 9 Eastern. It's 3 a.m. here to 6 a.m. here. Wow. So, you know, that's too early for anybody, although I have woken up to host that show at 2:45 in the morning. But we will be starting an evening show. It's going to be same channel, right after Mark Levin, on Sirius XM 125 from 6 p.m. Pacific to 9 p.m. Pacific. It's Breitbart News Tonight, and I will be co-hosting it with Rebecca Mansour. And we are going to continue expanding on the web, on the radio, maybe in some other media as well. And I feel great. You know, when people say, what's it like having Steve Bannon back at Breitbart? Well, first of all, Steve, let's just talk about him in the White House. Steve was the backbone of the Trump administration. He was the personification of the Trump agenda. And I hope that that has remained behind in the White House, even with him not there. We have to keep the pressure on. That's how we view our role as Breitbart. We're not cheerleaders. We believe in the movement. We believe in the agenda. We believe in you. And we want to represent the things that brought Trump to power, the people that voted for him.
Yes.
Not the person. But when he does the right thing, we will cheer very loudly and unabashedly for him. But Steve coming back to Breitbart, I said to people, it's like LeBron James coming back to the Cleveland Cavaliers. You know, he won on the biggest stage in the world, and now we feel like we can do anything. With him on our side, we can win anything, do anything, conquer anything.
Get rid of Ryan.
Get rid of Ryan.
Yes.
We'll see. You know,
fire him.
The
fire Paul Ryan and McConnell. Rhino.
I gotta say this, there's a great tradition, and maybe our next speaker will talk about it since he comes from the parliamentary system. There's a great tradition in the British parliamentary system of resigning. You know, if you say you're gonna do something and it doesn't happen, you resign.
Yep.
So, you know, I want to just plant the idea out there. Mitch McConnell promised to deliver Obamacare. Didn't happen. You know, in Britain, he probably wouldn't be there anymore. Just saying. I mean, it's just a tradition. I'd like to see it brought back. You know, the honorable resignation. It's not saying I failed. It's just saying others could lead better. And I think it's what you have to do. You know, my wife would say in the Navy, even if you have a mess of any kind, whether it's your room's dirty or, you know, some tool wasn't put away, which is a big problem if you're working on a ship, on an air deck, you just volunteer that it's your fault. You don't point fingers at each other and you don't pretend it didn't happen. You step forward and you take responsibility for it, and we need more leaders to do that.
Yeah.
I want to open up for questions. I'm running a little over time. That's my favorite thing to do, is answer questions. I fear I've spoken too long, but let me answer a few, and then we will have a short period to sign and sell books. I've got about 50 of those books. I'd love to sell all of them. They're $15. It's a discount. So I do hope I have cash. We can do credit, whatever you want. Let's ask, how many questions? 3 questions? Is that a good amount?
We'll see how we do.
We'll see how
we're pleased to have you. So I'll take on with the first question.
Okay.
We see, and I think it's part of what Breitbart's here and what it is. We see the unified reaction of urgency of the entire ruling class. We've got to help the DACA illegals. That does not exist for the angel moms. It does not exist for the 70,000 factories that were closed since 2000. It does not exist to secure the border, provide better schools for America, anything else. But you look at them jump when it comes to we have to help the DACA illegals.
The Republican Party fears the media. They fear the media, and their political actions are constrained by that fear. And the great thing about Donald Trump and Steve Bannon helping him was he did what Andrew Breitbart would have loved to do, which is to see right through the media and ignore their fear tactics, as Greg was saying earlier, ignore the names they call you, and just press forward. If something's right to do, it's right to do. And, you know, people said this thing about Andrew, when they tried to figure out what Andrew would have felt about Donald Trump. There was this old clip of him on Fox News where he said Donald Trump's not a conservative. Right. So people used that during the campaign. Oh, Andrew Breitbart said Donald Trump's not a conservative. But Andrew Breitbart said something else that people forgot about, but you can find it still on Twitter. He tweeted about it. He said Donald Trump sees through the media. He sees that the media and their racist label, they were using race a lot against the Tea Party, as you know. He sees that their racist label is empty, and he sees right through them, and that's why he's successful. Donald Trump gets it. And that's what Republicans don't get. So instead of thinking about what's best for the country in DACA, they're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be labeled a racist or a xenophobe or whatever. Right. You've got to stand up to it. You've got to stand up to it. If there are humanitarian reasons to make some compromises, okay, but don't fall for nonsense. There was a woman on TV on MSNBC, which I watch all the time, I like to watch what the opposition is doing. There was a woman interviewed. She said she was a DACA recipient. Okay, they're interviewing her. She's protesting in LA. And they said, well, why are you here at this protest? She says, well, I'm angry because now my future is in jeopardy, and my husband's in the army, and he just got deployed to Afghanistan, and he's going to worry while he's fighting for our country that his wife could get deported. I'm scratching my head and thinking, wait a minute. This doesn't make any sense at all. Your husband's in the military. I presume he's an American citizen, and even if he's not, the military has an accelerated program of citizenship for permanent residency. So if you're in the military and you're fighting overseas and you're married, you can immigrate legally. Why are you at this protest? Go down to the U.S. Citizen Immigration Services, fill out the forms, pay the fee, and do what everybody else does. Why do you have to protest it? So, you got to call them out when they make up these stories. Anyway, walk towards the fire. That's how you got to do it.
Agnes.
Hi, I was one of the angel moms that went to Paul Ryan's home, and he cowardly drove off, wouldn't even acknowledge us. What can we do from here to get him out of office?
I think the most important thing to do is find an alternative candidate. You know, when I talked to Republicans a couple of years ago, I was reading a book about the Tea Party, actually. It's an e-book, if you want to read that one. It's called Wacko Birds. That's what it's called. Wacko Bird. Why Wacko Birds? Because that's what John McCain called the Tea Party. And my Wacko Bird, of course, is a screaming eagle on the front of the cover. That's how eagles sound pretty crazy. They're also pretty cool. I was interviewing Republicans, and one of them told me, I won't say who it is because it was an off-the-record or sort of private comment, but he said, look, those who can serve as Speaker don't want to, and those who want to can't do it.
Right.
So the question has always been, who's the alternative? By the way, Ryan wasn't Speaker at that time. John Boehner was Speaker at that time. So the question is always, who is the alternative? And I just saw today in the I think it was USA Today or something, talking about Mark Meadows as a possible alternative. Look, Ryan and McConnell have, objectively, whether you like them or not as people or politicians, whatever, they failed to deliver on the agenda. I wrote a piece in November last year after Trump won. I said, very optimistically, I'm very optimistic at that point, I'm over the moon, everything's great. I said, look at these great bills that Ryan passed when Obama was in office. The repeal of Obamacare, the dealing with the deficit and the debt, this is amazing. All Trump has to do is sign these bills and it'll be a successful presidency.
Exactly.
Right. Except they didn't introduce those bills again, right? They voted to repeal Obamacare and they didn't have the guts to put the same bill on the table now that it might actually pass. So, you know, you've got to find other leaders if you want to challenge that. That's the thing to do. Mark Meadows is a name. Louis Gohmert, I heard someone shout. But Nayland, okay, so the problem with, I mean, he's a great guy. I don't know if he's running again. The problem is that he lost by a large margin when he primaried Ryan. Maybe he'd have better success now, I don't know. But the question is always, as Bill Clinton says, and Bill Clinton, whatever his other flaws, is a very astute and shrewd politician. The question is always compared to what? So you've got to have the what. You've got to have the what. Gary.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, why did President Trump fire Steve Bannon?
So Steve actually resigned, and he resigned earlier than was reported, and he kind of resigned, I think, a week or 10 days before Charlottesville, and it was all kind of in the shakeout after Charlottesville.
Hey, Assemblyman Lackey, how are you?
Steve told people at Breitbart that he only expected to be there for a year. He didn't see himself as a permanent fixture. I do think that what happened was, in some ways, some of the people that Trump hired, Gary Cohn and some of the other people,
Cohn's going out,
did not work well and did not want to work with Steve. I think that's, from what I can tell, and that was a challenge because, you know, Lincoln brought together this team of rivals. There's a great story, if you read Doris Kearns Goodwin's book, highly recommended, about the Civil War. He had a team of rivals, and there was this one guy who was really Lincoln's backbone. He was so pro-Lincoln, he was a fantastic guy, and Lincoln made him Postmaster General, which was at the time a very important post. He was one of the best Postmaster Generals we've ever had. We still have the post. I don't know who has it now, but okay. It was Montgomery Blair. And he was really a Lincoln guy, and the others in the cabinet didn't like him. They didn't get along with him. And eventually, to secure agreement among the others on some policy or another, I forget which one it was, Lincoln had to ask Montgomery Blair to resign. And Blair resigned because he wanted to do the best thing for his president and his country. And at that point, there were no hard feelings about it. And I think that's how it was with Steve, where he parted in a way to allow Trump to manage this team he had now pulled together, because there were things that Steve had partly set in motion, but that had to happen a certain way. And look, I think it's a loss for the Trump administration, and I don't know what some of these people are doing there. I mean, I can talk about Gary Cohn. I don't mind having someone who's not a hardcore conservative in the administration bring another perspective, but he's constantly running the president down in public. I mean, he said bad things about him after Charlottesville. He said that Trump didn't understand climate change or something like that. I mean, why do you have, anyway, so I'm not going to get into, I try not to pick winners and losers, but I think that it's a big loss to the administration. I was sorry to see it happen, but boy, am I happy to have him back at Breitbart.
This question?
He's
letting me have it. All right, thanks a lot. So we've got people who are watching in other parts of the country right now. We understand you. Good. We understand you grew up in Illinois, so really bad news. A Republican, quote-unquote, governor signed off on sanctuary state. What are your thoughts on that, and what can we do? Because we're facing that same dilemma. Oh, yeah. What do we do to stop this and reverse this terrible pattern in these blue states? What are your thoughts? So 2 questions in a sense. Your reaction to your home state going sanctuary, and what do we do as conservatives to stop this destructive policy? Because we're facing it too.
Right, so two reactions to that. One is that if Bruce Rauner thinks that going sanctuary is going to save him in the re-election campaign, he's dead wrong. Because the people who voted for him are not going to show up. They're not going to show up, and he needs those votes. A Republican can only win in Illinois by the slimmest of margins. And if you lose the people who are most active, the people like the people in this room, you can forget about it. And by the way, I had my doubts about Bruce Rauner from the beginning. Even though it was great to see a Republican win and all that stuff, his first speech to the Illinois legislature, I wrote an article about it, saying that while he said some good things about budgets and taxes and so forth, he had this thing where he was bending over backwards on political correctness and race and that kind of thing. I thought, you can't do that. You cannot bow to the other side's crazy identity politics, because that shows you can be defeated on just about anything.
Yep.
And lo and behold, here we are. I mean, sanctuary state, how do you beat it? It's just completely illegal and unconstitutional, yes. And it's going to lose in the courts. California will lose in the courts, and I think that this is a fight that Trump's going to win. The thing is, though, you've got to have people who stick together with him and support him and push him on that and tell him not to give up. And Rauner, for whatever reason, has turned his back on those people, and I don't think it's going to go very well.
So no one else here, so I will take the honor of the last question. Okay. I asked you on the radio show, are we winning or losing the war, the long war for the soul of America? I know what your answer is. So the second part is, how do we win?
So my answer, I think, was we're losing, right? We're losing the long war. Yes, we're losing the long war. Because, ladies and gentlemen, your children or grandchildren and mine are being taught to hate this country, and they're not being taught the history of this country. And worst of all, they're being taught to hate themselves. And I want to elaborate a little bit about that now that we have an opportunity to share this kind of story. But when my wife went to college, she studied economics. And she complained to me about her economic history course. She took a course in economic history. And she said, my professor is telling us the craziest things. And I didn't believe her until I went with her to class one day just to see what was going on. And this professor was telling these young students, this is at Harvard University, okay? He's telling these young students about the internet. It was one of the last lectures of the year. You know, they start with the 1600s, they get to the 20th century. The internet. Government created the internet.
No.
And all these guys in Silicon Valley who made all this money, they did it because of government. And they just basically stole all this money from the public, etc. And I said, how can you tell young people at the college that produced Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, they wrote their programs in their dorm rooms, both Gates and Zuckerberg. How can you tell these people, any one of whom could be one of those future entrepreneurs, that it's not them, they don't do it, it's the government? How could you undermine them like that? And you know what happens to those kids? Most of them don't become Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, that's fine. Most of them, especially at Harvard, go on to Wall Street jobs, management consulting, legal jobs, and they make a lot of money. And do you know how they feel about themselves when they make a lot of money? They feel bad about themselves. They like the money, but they feel they've done something wrong, because that's what they've been told. They've been told success is wrong. They've been told that if you succeed, it's because you took it from somebody else. That's what our country is telling young people. And I had a kind of epiphany that day. You know, I'm very pro-Israel. And I was worried.
Yeah!
You know, and our campuses are terrible. I mean, there's terrible stuff going on campus about Israel.
Anti-Semitism.
Anti-Israel organizations are organized. They have a lot of money. They have outside organizers. A lot of the Muslim American students, I'm sorry to say, their parents come from countries that hated Israel and hated Jews, and they bring that to campus. Some of them are very nice people. Some of them don't have those views. But a lot of the young anti-Israel activists on campus draw from there. Anyway, when I sat in on that lecture, I realized the problem on my particular issue at the time, which was Israel. The problem wasn't that college students were taught to hate Israel. The problem was that college students were taught to hate America. Why is that the problem? Because if you are told that success and failure are determined by a hidden group of people and not by your own individual effort, they're determined by the government or by, some little cabal on Wall Street that manipulates everything or whatever, you will eventually develop those prejudices. They will come out of that mistaken belief. If you believe, for example, like the Egyptians did and the Syrians did, that the only way Israel could have beaten them in war was that if it had some control over the world's media and the Jews controlled the world, all this anti-Semitic stuff. Instead of saying, hey, these guys beat us because they're tougher and they're fighting and they built an economy and they built weapons and they know how to, instead of just seeing success for what it is, they had to invent a conspiracy theory. When you teach people that America's success is a conspiracy, which is what kids are told, you are ingraining, you're building the thought process in their minds that leads to prejudice and hatred. Wow. That's the truth. That the way the left thinks is germane to hatred. The way you think is not racist. None of the people in this room are racist. The way you think is germane to liberty and freedom and overcoming racism. The way that you think liberates a black child in a poor community in a failing school to succeed on his or her own merit. Right. You've liberated that individual. That's the mentality of freedom. That's the creed of the Tea Party, which was described earlier. It's the opposite of racism because it upholds the Judeo-Christian idea of the dignity of the individual.
Yes.
We are losing that battle on campuses, but we can win it, and the way we win it is through social media, through new websites like Breitbart, through activities like you're doing today. Millennials, there's no doubt most of them are left, but there's also a backlash. We have a huge number of millennial readers at Breitbart. You guys may have heard of Milo Yiannopoulos, who used to work at Breitbart. He was pulling in all these millennial kids because they were rebels, right? Young people like to rebel. And what were they rebelling against? They were rebelling against political correctness. They could tell there was something wrong. They didn't know what it was. Young people want to rebel. And right now, the orthodoxy at these colleges is politically correct, is anti-American, and you'll find enough rebels in that crowd who will want to join you and walk alongside you. That's how you start to win. We're losing, but we can win. With that, let me close. I've spoken too long, but I think we have about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to stand over there. The books are $15. I take cash or credit. I want to just close by thanking you again, and thank you for your activism. Thank you for your sacrifice for the veterans and the angel moms. And thank you for your prayers. I know we're all thinking about Florida and Texas. Yes. And, I always think, we're just one earthquake away from being that news story. So we have to all stick together and help each other. And I think we're all united, and it feels good to be that way, even in these times. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching. I'm glad there were some Illinois residents. I'm glad I could help you out, so you got to hear from us. I'm going to just close the feed for now, and we'll talk later. Thanks again for following. Please share.